The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast, presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we'll discuss the latest news and info that feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you're a seasoned federal employee or just starting out in your career, Fed15 has got you covered. So grab your coffee, your eggnog, maybe kick back, and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed. We're your hosts, Dan Sipe and Chelsea English. How's it going, Dan?
It's great, Chelsea. Good to have you back. It's been a minute.
Good to be back. Happy to be here.
Same to you. Same to you. I know podcasts are supposed to exist outside of time and space, but we still try and recognize some things that are happening in the real world. And that's why I am adorned in pink today. Because at our last episode, there was a chance, this lightning pop-up surprise chance of a shutdown. And so I'm a man of my word. Okay, when the shutdown's avoided, I wear the pink shirt. So thank you to our House and Senate, both sides of the aisle. Thank you for the relatively clean bill that was passed. You know where I come down on this, folks. My true colors are Fed, but also the shutting down of the government should not be a parliamentary procedure. Okay, that shouldn't be a normal thing that we have as part of things. So, our founders came up with a really great idea. They knew we'd have disagreements. They knew we'd have vigorous disagreements, angry disagreements. Okay, they didn't envision just shutting the whole government down because we disagreed. So thank you again for doing that on behalf of our feds and everybody else. So Chelsea, as we've talked about previously, you're a pretty dedicated sports fan, and a couple of your teams had some, dare I say, year-making or season-making wins this year, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I went to Michigan, big Michigan fan. That's definitely got to be my number one fan loyalty allegiance there. It was a bit of a tough season coming off of a perfect season last year, 15-0, won the national championship. I got to go to the Rose Bowl last year and see them beat Alabama in overtime. So this season didn't quite feel like that. But we did get to end the regular season beating our biggest rival, Ohio State, in Columbus. And so, that was completely unexpected. It was in 120 years of the rivalry between these two schools, it was the largest upset based on the spread. So very unexpected. No one was anticipating that, except for the players. The Michigan team, they felt like they could go in and win. And that really kind of erases the rest of the season. That felt great. And then, Navy beat Army. Navy's been good this year, but Army was better, and Army was definitely expected to win. Navy was the underdog. And so it was, like you said, really great way to end the season for our two favorite teams.
Nice. And that Navy QB was pretty much unstoppable.
I know. It really looked like a different team this year. And it was sometimes players take over a game and you kind of wonder if they're invisible. Because of how they get open or make cuts or things like that. This guy just ran through people. Yeah.
There'd be a hole, and then there'd be a whole lot of Army players that he dragged or knocked over. So that was pretty impressive to watch.
It was a great game.
Yep. And for those of you who have been watching for a while, you may know I actually have fond connections to Navy for a very different reason. And that was I was a truly mediocre high school wrestler. And in an effort to become something other than mediocre, I used to attend the wrestling camp at the U.S. Naval Academy. And so have some really fond memories and connections to that. If you know anything about about wrestling in general, but especially high school wrestling, the season runs through Christmas, which means you have to watch your weight through Christmas. And I'm telling you, that's an unnatural act, by any stretch of the imagination. So being able to go someplace and do the sport you love and eat as much as you want. And Chelsea, I'm sure you're aware of this. The food at the academy is really good. And so that's I was very pleased for that outcome. So we were rooting on the same side. So we got a couple of things to kind of close out or kick off, depending on when you're encountering this. So we're going to talk about mixed retirement households, because we have a ton of those, within our practice, and they're just out there in the world where one person's a Fed and the other person's private sector, or perhaps a different type of public sector. And there are some planning opportunities to go along with that. And then Chelsea, you're going to bring us up to speed, because it's never too early to start talking about what COLA projections might be for 2026. And we're really getting to jump on stuff. So to kind of get us rolling, so mixed retirement households, that just basically means one of the couple is a Fed and one is not. So within, we've got an article in this. Be sure to head over to blog.stwserve.com to check it out. But it really becomes a little bit more of a, shall I say, a symphony in laying out what you're doing to take advantage of each person's program. So obviously, some of the things, for Feds, you're going to have a pension, unless your spouse is a state employee or a county employee, say an educator, may not see that. So you've got some interesting things other than the pension that they may not have. Most notably is the TSP. TSP, yes, you can look at it like a 401k, but it's got those standardized, big, broad, low-cost index funds, which really make it a terrific tool to have factored in. Your spouse will probably have a 401k or a 403b or something like that. If they're employed, they might have a SEP IRA, and they may or may not have the same type of broad, low-cost indexes in there. So there are strategies to go along with that. Some other things that a Fed will have built in there. If you're a first employee and you are going out at an MRA like 57, you do have a first supplement that'll help close that gap. As you know, we have written articles that sort of sound a warning on not just grabbing that supplement and not taking into consideration what you're giving up by not getting until 62. You can certainly find those on our website. But also with the blended private sector, public sector planning, you may want to consider who should claim Social Security first, or should you do it at the same time? Should the higher compensated spouse claim later? We would right now be talking about the windfall elimination provision for CSRs, folks, but that's gone. We don't have to worry about it anymore. So in between the time that we literally authored this, that passed in the Senate, and I believe it's been signed into law. So that's fantastic. When it comes to having the two different defined contribution plans, so TSP and a 401k, TSP and a 403b, this isn't in the article, so I'll throw it in. What we've observed is that a whole lot of private sector 401ks, if they are not the giant ones that include a Fidelity or a Vanguard, will have a couple of really good funds in there, a couple of okay funds, and a couple of funds that aren't so great. So the strategy we deploy is that we want to make the most of the good funds. So that might mean one spouse's allocation might be overweighted one way or the other. The great news is that we have the ability to balance that with the recommendations in TSP. If you want to talk more about that, hit us up at ask.stws@stwserve.com. Yeah, you can schedule a consult. We can take you through that. Some of the things that you're both going to have. You're both going to have catch-up contributions after 50 plus. Most likely, you're both going to have lifecycle funds that you can use within your respective ones. But you want to do your homework. You want to go under the hood. You want to make sure that the fees on those are, well below 1%. Now, when we get into the nuts and bolts of decisions that you're going to make, the federal retiree is going to have, in addition to the pension, something that if our colleague Caitlin Murray were here, she would say, is the most valuable thing, and that's the ability to keep the FEHB coverage in retirement. So you want to make sure that the Fed has that FEHB in force for at least 5 years prior to when they retire. So here's where you might say, well, Dan, why would I not have that? Well, one of the things we've seen, and again, this is where you cannot replace the boots on the ground experience that we've been blessed to have. We have some private sector employers that are incredibly generous in what they cover of the healthcare costs, even more so than Uncle Sam's 75%. So we do have some situations where people are on their spouse's health plan, but that does not extend into retirement. So you have to be sure, if you are making that decision, that you are back in your federal health plan 5 years before you retire. And then you're able to keep that, provided that you give a survivor annuity. For CSRS employee, that could be literally as low as $1. For a FERS employee, it would be at least 25% on that survivorship. Now, another thing to think about is with private sector and public sector coming together, a lot of private sector folks it's just a given they're going into Medicare. You may want to if you're covered under their FEHB, but it's not, unless you're a postal employee, a requirement. So that's an important distinction to have there. Another thing, you may want to stagger how you're taking money from the respective, TSP's 401ks. You may find it is in your best interest to draw more from one initially. We can help you figure that out. And one huge difference, if you are with a private sector employee that does have a pension plan, take a hard look at it and see how good its structure is, because many times they offer some sort of a lump sum to go along with that. You want to be sure, if that's a good option for you, that you consider that. Again, that's something that we are certainly able to talk you through. We've been doing it for close to 40 years. We understand the nuts and bolts. So to sum it up, a mixed retirement household has some great opportunities and some unique challenges, but with a strategic approach, you can end up with a great outcome. So feel free to hit us up. Strangely enough, we don't have a webinar on that specifically, but as you can see, we've written about it. We've got this podcast, and we do have the ability to talk through with you. So we'd love to do that. So Chelsea, you have some things for 2026 COLA forecast. What do we got?
That's right. Now, as you mentioned earlier, it is an early prediction. It feels early. But yeah, we've got this 2026 cost of living or COLA and what that means for federal retirees. So I'm sure many of you have been following the inflation trends and wondering, how is this going to impact me and my retirement benefits? So let's dive in. The Senior Citizens League, or TSCL, recently predicted that the 2026 COLA will be about 2.5%. And that's right in line with the 2025 adjustment, reflecting a period of pretty modest inflation. So the Senior Citizen League will keep updating this forecast monthly until the Social Security Administration announces the official number in October of 2025. Now, here's the big picture. Inflation is stabilizing. Dan, I know you remember how crazy things got in 2022 with inflation peaking over 9%.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, those days are behind us, at least for now. So the Consumer Price Index for Urban Wage Earners, or the CPIW, is the measure used for COLA calculations. And it's been trending below 3% for 2 straight quarters.
Okay.
So for retirees on fixed incomes, that can feel like a bit of a relief. But, and there's always a but, we know other costs, especially like healthcare premiums, are still on the rise. If
Sure.
you're a federal retiree, you probably noticed those FEHB increases during open enrollment not so long ago. So here's what really stood out to me in TSCL's report. They surveyed over 3,000 seniors, and 69% of them said that they're worried about rising living costs draining their savings. And honestly, that's not surprising. For federal retirees who really heavily rely on their CSRS or FERS pensions and Social Security, those small increases from COLA adjustments don't always match up with the real world cost of things like groceries and housing and, medical costs and premiums like we were talking about. So then, there's this broader concern of potential cuts to Social Security and Medicare benefits. So according to the survey, 74% of respondents are nervous about possible Social Security reductions and 70% are worried about Medicare. That's a lot of uncertainty, especially when these programs are such a cornerstone of retirement for so many people. Now, one interesting takeaway, most seniors at 81% support raising or even eliminating the income cap for Social Security payroll taxes to shore up the system. Sure. So this would look like, higher earners contributing more, which could help stabilize the program long term. It's definitely a hot topic that federal retirees should keep an eye on because, these kinds of reforms could directly impact your benefits. TSCL's executive director, Shannon Benton, made a really strong point that even though inflation is cooling, seniors are still feeling the economic squeeze. So she highlighted the need for a guaranteed minimum COLA of 3% to help retirees keep pace with real world costs, especially, in areas like healthcare and prescription drug costs. So, that's a big thing. We'll keep an eye on it. But, bottom line, what does all of this mean for you? If you're feeling like your retirement income isn't keeping up, now is a great time to act. So whether that's reevaluating your budget or, maximizing your benefits or adjusting your investment strategy, taking proactive steps now can make a huge difference. And of course, if you're not sure where to start, our team at Serving Those Who Serve is here to help. Absolutely.
Folks, one of the things that kind of looking back, reflecting on not just this year, but all the years that we've closed out, we have really helped a ton of people. And that's who we are. That's who we want to be. But one of the things that I've said for nearly 40 years, we're going to be answering questions every day. We might as well answer yours. So if there's something that's working on you, don't completely understand, hit us up at STWS at STWServe.com and we'll help you any way we can on that. But that's about all the time we have for today, folks. But have no fear. We'll be back next week to bring you the latest updates you need to make informed decisions about your career and well-being as a Fed.
And, our analytics show us that 82% of folks watching our videos aren't subscribed. So please subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel, FedLife, so you never miss an episode. And please, please, please remember to share it with your friends and colleagues.
Absolutely. Hit that subscribe button. And for more information on the topics covered in today's show and more, be sure to check out our blog at blog.stwserve.com. Subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving. That's even better. Then you don't have to go looking for it. We will ship it all right to you. Hit your inbox every week. You'll never miss it. Every single week.
Absolutely. And for those of you who want to dive even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for feds, we really encourage you to join us for one of our complimentary webinars. We have our tax webinar coming up on January 9th at 1 p.m. Great one to hit as we're heading into, heavy tax season.
Oh, yeah.
And then we've got our, ever popular TSP webinar on January 16th at 1 p.m. Or if you prefer a one-on-one approach, please feel free to reach out to our team directly for a financial planning consultation at askstws at stwserve.com.
Operators are standing by. Okay, folks, thank you for listening to us all through the last year and looking forward to keeping you hopefully informed and entertained for many years to come. I'm Dan Sight.
And I'm Chelsea English.
And we will see you next week.